Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Rip It Off podcast, where we confront shame, untangle bad theology, and rebuild intimacy in Christian marriages. If you're new here, I'm so glad you're here. And if you've been around for a while, you already know we don't tiptoe around that hard stuff. So let's not tiptoe today. Somewhere along the way, Christian women, you and I, picked up this idea that sex is mostly for men, that our job is to be available, to be responsive, to not want it too much, and to not enjoy it too much, and yet to be available and, vicious cycle. And definitely, we don't talk about it too much or really at all. But here's what I want you to think about. Go back to Genesis. Before sin, before shame, before consequences. I know if you've been around for a while, this is maybe my favorite thing to talk about. So I started a new devotional today. I'm really loving these from She Reads Truth. This one is people in the Old Testament. And guess who the people are that we started with in day one? Adam and Eve. So we're gonna camp out on Adam and Eve for just a minute, which we do often. So God created Adam and Eve. He embodied them, physical, capable of pleasure. And after the fall, yes, there were consequences. And it says, this is what I love about God's word. He's so clear. I'm just going to read you these things. He says, your desire for the wife will be for Eve, for women. Your desire will be for your husband, and yet he will rule over you. Hold on. Before that, it says, because you have done this, that's for the serpent. He said to the woman, I will intensify your labor pains and you will bear children with painful effort. And then goes on to say, your desire will be for your husband and he will rule over you. So there are always consequences to our sin, right? And then he goes on and gives consequences to the men, which we'll just go ahead and do some equal time here. He says, the ground is cursed because of you. You will eat from it by means of painful labor all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. You will eat bread by the sweat of your brow until you return to the ground, since you were taken from it. For you are dust and you will return to dust. So maybe your husband, like my husband, doesn't toil in the ground, but he works, and there's labor involved in that. Okay, so women, after the fall, yes, like I said, there's consequences. Pain in childbirth, struggle in relationships, brokenness entered the world. But there is, again, I will say this and I will never get tired of this. There is no indication in scripture that Eve's body was redesigned. We see nothing. If you have found something, please let me know. But we see nothing that there was pre-fall Eve, fall, and then a redesign. Nothing says her anatomy changed, meaning the way God created her physically was intentional. And since I believe, and I think you do too, God does not make any mistakes. There are no coincidences. This was all on purpose. So let's talk very plainly. The female body includes an organ which has a sole biological function for sexual pleasure. Did you know this? The clitoris or clitoris, I don't know, it's said 1,000 different ways, but has around 8,000 nerve endings. And did you know that it's not just churches that are not talking about female anatomy and pleasure and all that kind of stuff? Did you know that just in science, not that I'm a scientist, but science has really only come to this understanding in the last 15, 20 years, might even be less than that, which then means that they didn't even understand. And sexual pleasure has almost always been referred to from a male perspective. So you can understand why there's some confusion about this. But let's go back to this. If the clitoris has around 8,000 nerve endings and it exists only for pleasure, that's it. That is its sole function, not reproduction, not survival, but pleasure. And again, as I said before, there are no coincidences. This is not an accident. God did not accidentally design women to experience pleasure. He could have designed reproduction without it, and he could have removed it as a consequence to sin, but he did not. And if pleasure were sinful inside marriage, God would not have designed your body to respond that way. Then you get to Song of Solomon, and the woman is not passive at all. She speaks, she longs, she invites, she delights. That's all in the Bible. Female pleasure is not a modern feminist invention. It's a covenant design. Yes, you can experience pleasure sexually outside of marriage, right? But that's not how God designed it. It is meant to be between a man and a woman because not only, and we've gone into this before, the science and the brain chemistry that happens within sex and that bonding of oxytocin that happens with us, it is really designed to be fully and completely enjoyed within marriage. Now, let me say something gently. If pleasure feels uncomfortable to you, if you feel guilty enjoying it, if you've never really allowed yourself to think about it, that's likely not because your body is wrong. Like I say likely, not your body is not wrong. It's not because of that. It's because of what you were taught. And a lot of us were taught good girls don't want that. Good girls don't think about that. Good girls don't initiate that. And then we get married and we're expected to, just flip the switch. It doesn't work like that. You can't train your brain to shut something down for 15, 20, however long, however many years before you got married and then expect it to bloom. Now, when I say 15, I'm not assuming that you got married at 15, but I'm assuming that the conversations probably didn't start at birth, right? So what do you do with this? Here's where we get really practical. When I put episodes together, I always want to make sure that I am giving you some actual practical things that you can do. So here's some things that you can do. Maybe all of them, maybe one of them, maybe half of one. Start on it. Slow down instead of rushing through intimacy. Now, I get it. If you got little kids, easier said than done. Maybe find a time when you can slow down or make that happen, send the kids to grandma, stuff like that. Take pressure off of performance. Do you remember when it was just so much fun to make out with your husband when you were dating? Because that's all you could do? Or, we didn't have sex before marriage. So, it seemed so fun, right? And now you're like, okay, I don't know, just, that's what I think of it. Take the pressure off, just have fun. Have a simple conversation I'm realizing I've never thought about what feels good for me. Now, if your husband is anything like my husband, he's like, hold up, let's spend some time here. My husband has always been very kind, very selfless when it comes to that. I didn't understand how to handle that. And I just really assumed it was all about him. And I'm so grateful for his patience when it has come to that. So have that conversation. Then look at your schedule. Are you ever not exhausted? Look at your schedule. What are some things that maybe you can remove from your schedule? Okay, in the essence of being practical. Maybe this means you got to ask grandma, hey, can you take the kids for a Saturday afternoon? Maybe that means planning a day date instead of a late night date when you're falling asleep. If your schedules apply, if that works for your schedules. Sometimes words. How do I do this? So yeah, find a time that works. Maybe your kids are school age and you send them off to school. Can your husband maybe go into work a little bit later? Or, what's something that you can do? Maybe it means putting your phones down after dinner and sitting next to him instead of across the room. Friend, biggest thing, do not compare your rhythms to someone else's rhythms. So I think of I have a lot of friends whose husbands are either in law enforcement or first responder. Their schedules are very different than my husband's schedule. My husband works more of a 9 to 5 corporate situation. He has a lot of flexibility in his days, but I have one friend who, they full days off. I can't compare my schedule to their schedule. It just doesn't work. And it really just leads to confusion or not frustration on my part. So look at your life, your calendar, your energy, be intentional. What are some ways that you can put that together? Maybe it's hiring a babysitter for the day for just a couple of hours, go to the farmer's market together, walk around, hold hands. Maybe it's not actual intimacy and sex, but it's intimacy in a different way. God designed your body on purpose. Pleasure inside covenant is not sinful at all. And I don't say that flippantly. It seems like an obvious, well, of course, pleasure inside covenant of a marriage is not sinful, but somehow we've kind of felt that way without maybe realizing it. That time with your spouse is sacred. It really is. And I constantly think of that verse. Is it 1 Corinthians 10? Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. It's basically whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do all to the glory of God, all of it. Do everything you do, loading the dishwasher, folding the laundry, having sex with your husband, do all to the glory of God. And if this is new ground for you, that's exactly and why I created Naked and Unashamed, a 31-day journey to help you untangle the lies and rebuild intimacy without shame. You know what's so funny is when I started this podcast, I didn't really realize that the umbrella that I was talking about was shame until I had a guest on, Lisa Limehouse. You can go back and listen to her episode. Can't remember which number one it is, but go back. And afterwards, she was kind of the one that pointed out that that's what we're doing is we're untangling shame here. And I love a good bottom line of like, that's what we're doing. So anyways, you can go grab Naked and Unashamed at bit.ly/31-day journey. You are not too much and you're not wrong for being built the way God built you. I love you, friend, and I will see you next week. If this conversation stirred something in you and you want to go deeper, head over to itsmemichellcastro.com. There, you'll find resources, studies, and tools to help you continue rebuilding intimacy in your marriage. And remember, you're not the only one navigating this. If this episode encouraged you, share it with a friend and start the conversation. Until next time, keep seeking truth, keep choosing courage, and keep rebuilding intimacy.